Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, sir, for the kind introduction. Thank you, SRN.com, for this opportunity to talk on obesity and kidney disease. I just wanted to confirm if my slides are visible to everybody.
Yes, visible.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about obesity and kidney today, and I've taken a slightly different approach. Instead of just talking about clinical factors, but try to get into how the pathophysiology and biology of obesity and kidney disease. We know obesity is a raging pandemic now, and WHO defines obesity as BMI more than 30, and it is responsible for a staggering 4.5 million deaths prematurely every year. Just to get into context, this is about 4 times the number of people that have died in road accident, or 5 times the number of HIV/AIDS death in 2017. And yet, when somebody has been diagnosed with obesity, really there are no ears raised, there are no red flags, because it's such a passive, ongoing background silent killer that we are not really very worried if somebody is obese. Obesity also represents one side of the double burden of malnutrition, the other side being undernutrition. And nowadays there are more obese and overweight patients compared to undernourished patients, except in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. And it is a rapidly growing at about the rate of 30% in developing countries compared to developed countries. So it is not something that can be really neglected. When you look at the number of deaths attributed to obesity, this is a 2017 data from Global Burden of Disease published in Lancet, we see that India is doing reasonably well compared to its neighbor China in terms of death. And obviously Europe and America are still doing bad, and they are worse, more affected than India. Having said that, if you look at these trajectories of United States deaths due to obesity and Western Europe, you see that they are beginning to flatten out. Whereas of concern is China and India, which we are on the ascent as compared to the world. So while we are definitely lower in terms of death, I'm sure there will be time when we would cross this trajectory and go beyond this. In China right now, the obesity-related kidney disease is probably overtaking even diabetic-related kidney disease. And in terms of deaths in India, obesity ranks among the first 10 causes of deaths, with 5.5 or rather 500,000 deaths every year. That's quite a lot of deaths. This is a cartoon depicting the various problems that one would see with obese patients, right from the brain to the toe, with gout, stroke, heart, and almost every organ that is involved, including the kidneys. And we know that obesity and metabolic syndromes are associated with cardiovascular risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, sleep apnea, hyperuricemia, and insulin resistance. And of note, diabetes and hypertension themselves can lead to kidney disease. And when associated with obesity and pandemic, they confer a higher risk of CKD in obese individuals. So let's look at how and to what extent lifestyle changes have affected epidemiology of kidney disease. We all know that reduction in agrarian diet and increase in calorie-dense processed industry food, along with reduction in physical activity, increased consumption of smoking, alcohol, and all such kind of lifestyle changes has led to increase in obesity and incidence of diabetes and hypertension. Each of these individually can lead to kidney disease. However, in addition, when you develop sleep apnea, cardiovascular diseases, this CKD progresses rapidly to renal fibrosis and end-stage renal disease. And all of these processes are influenced by genetic and environmental factors. We know that obesity is highly prevalent, and compared to that, kidney disease in obesity is not that prevalent. It affects only a percentage of population of obese people. So that proves that obesity itself is not a sufficient risk factor for kidney disease, and there is something else that triggers to the kidney disease. Possibly low nephron numbers may lead to predisposition to obesity-related kidney disease. And when you have low nephron numbers, there is glomerulomegaly, and there has to be an increase in single nephron GFR to meet the metabolic demands of the body. And for that to happen, there is some element of dilated afferent arteriole that leads to transmission of systemic hypertension, leading to impaired autoregulation within the glomerulus and sclerosis. Obesity also leads to capillary hypertrophy and increase in capillary diameter. As a result, the terminally differentiated podocytes density starts reducing, and there is less support to the capillary wall, and these gaps start forming through which protein leak may happen over a period of time. Now, what is the evidence that we have for direct mechanistic link between obesity and kidney disease? Obesity primarily causes kidney disease by three different pathways. Obesity can cause obesity-related glomerulopathy. Obesity predisposes to stone diseases. And we know that in transplants, it can cause poor renal graft life. Obesity in co-association with other comorbidities like diabetes and metabolic syndromes can lead to obvious kidney diseases individually and in combination with them. But this factor of inflammation is a common link between obesity and CKD. And inflammation can lead to glomerular sclerosis and tubular interstitial atrophy by releasing of pro-inflammatory hormones like angiotensin II via adipose tissue and the kidney. And these in turn will increase response of pro-inflammatory neurohormonal response like increase in interferon alpha, interleukins, and CD4 cells, which will be more than the anti-inflammatory FOXP3 CD4 cells. And all of that leads to systemic inflammation. And this inflammation leads to an interesting concept about fat intestine kidney axis. So when this inflammation happens, it leads to gut dysbiosis because this inflammation affects various organs. Normally, there is a tissue homeostasis maintained by a coordinated response between regulatory cells and bacteria, which is maintained through good function of the liver, kidney, adipose tissue, etc. However, when this hormone is disrupted, there is inflammation, and this inflammation leads to gut dysbiosis. Gut dysbiosis causes change in the gut microbiota, which leads then to systemic response of inflammation. And this systemic response of inflammation is mediated by increase in leptin, decrease in adiponectin, and inflammatory surge. And all of this inflammatory surge further leads to inflammation in the kidneys and damage in the kidneys. We also know that the adipose tissue itself can release adipose-derived factors along with the uremic milieu of a CKD, which causes the affection of the gut microbiota, which releases inflammatory cells like cytokines, inflammatory cells like dendritic cells and macrophages, which will then affect the kidney. The kidney, in turn, conversely, also when damaged, will release inflammatory cells, which will affect the adipose tissue and cause them to release adipose-derived factors, and this will perpetuate the cycle then. Adiponectin, also adipose tissue, when adipose tissue reduces adiponectin normally, but when inflammation happens, the adiponectin is less. This leads to downregulation of the adiponectin receptor, causing decrease in the AMPK, causing increase in inflammation, and thereby podocyte food process effacement, and as we described, the clinical effects of proteinuria, glomerulomegaly, etc., etc. Gut and kidney sodium balance is also an interesting concept to note. Sodium that is consumed is sensed by the G cells in the stomach, and they cause release of L-dopa and gastrin. These are then taken up by the amino acid transporters and cause stimulation of the gastrin receptor. L-dopa is converted to dopamine, and that both of them then will stimulate the gastrin and dopamine receptors, which will lead to natriuresis. Now, in obesity, this axis is disrupted, and as a result of which there is sodium retention, hypertension, and acute kidney injury. Now, to put all of this in a compact diagram, we discussed obesity leading to hypertension, obesity causing hyperfiltration, hyperperfusion injury, leading to hypertrophy, proteinuria, and a chronic kidney disease. But importantly, also insulin resistance, increase in visceral adiposity, and then the inflammatory responses like reduced adiponectin, increased leptin, increased adipose renin-angiotensin aldosterone system like angiotensin II, and all of them again will lead to kidney disease, finally leading to glomerular sclerosis and end-stage kidney disease. Now, what are the current and future therapies for obese patients with kidney disease. The diet interventions that are being talked about and discussed are high fiber diet, because high fiber diet can promote short chain fatty acid producing bacteria, which are apparently known to reduce inflammation and reduce thereby metabolic syndrome and CKD in preclinical studies in animal models. We presume and hope that probiotics also help reduce the inflammatory response and thereby the kidney damage associated with obesity. In terms of drugs, metformin is highly studied for its antifibrotic actions in models of renal disease. It also will improve metabolic control and thereby reduce kidney disease via diabetes and its effect on the kidney. The known drugs like angiotensin receptor blockers, SGLT2 inhibitors, and even HIF inhibitor activators are being investigated for the role in prevention of obesity-related glomerulopathy. In terms of surgery, bariatric surgery is definitely recommended for people who have exhausted all means of weight reduction, are not able to lose weight, and who meet a criteria of BMI more than 35 or 40, depending on the center and the thresholds. It is important to remember that people may gain weight back even after surgery unless you address holistically the issue of weight gain and obesity. Lastly, fecal microbiota transplantation is thought of as a way to address obesity-related glomerulopathy, because twin studies have shown that in twin, one of which is obese and one of which is not obese, they find that the difference has been the microbiota within them, and therefore transplanting microbiota from a non-obese person to obese person may thereby reduce and affect inflammation in such a way that it may reduce obesity, and that is the hope and thought behind this treatment option. At the end, we cannot forget that in our busy practices, we hardly get time to talk about a holistic approach, and it is very easy to prescribe and advise of weight loss, but just exercising and diet sometimes does not lead to weight loss, because there are so many other factors which we do not know of. And hence, it is necessary to have a multidisciplinary team that can help your patients lose weight. And always forget, prevention is the best treatment, and maybe it should start right in the childhood by preventing childhood obesity. There are certain knowledge gaps that remain in our understanding of the link between obesity and kidney disease, and I will just enumerate a few. We know of the obesity paradox, where obesity is associated with worse cardiovascular outcome in normal people, but somehow it is apparently causing better outcomes in dialysis patients. And we really don't know how that happens, except the inflammatory part, and maybe eating well reduces the malnutrition inflammation complex, and therefore maybe it helps. We need to identify factors that most strongly influence renal function in the setting of obesity. We do not know if it is the BMI, actual BMI, or there is a range of BMI that is more predisposed to obesity, and work needs to be done to understand that. We need to better understand the metabolic alterations that occur in the gut microbiota of patients with CKD, and the probiotics is a work in that regards. But unless we really know if it is a particular enterotype in CKD that is more predisposed versus others, that is a limitation currently there. And lastly, genetic contributions cannot be neglected. We know of obesity runs in families, but even if people stay different from the same family, they still end up being obese. So we do not know how that happens despite living differently and eating differently. So somewhere along, we need to understand our genetic response to calorie intake. Maybe that is what is altered, and that could help us identify high-risk patients and start preventive therapies in them very early. With that, I would end my talk, and happy to discuss any questions